write a book, and I love that saying, you don't need more time, you need a deadline. So for my second book, I gave myself 3 weeks to send it to the editor because I thought I've been sitting talking about this book for 3 years. I'm giving myself 3 weeks.
Hey, everybody, it's another week, and another week means another episode of Leaders Talk. As always, I am your host, Chief Relationship Officer here at Leaders Press, Andrew Dupe, and I am really happy to have today Cindy Norcott. So let me take a second to introduce Cindy to you. Cindy launched her business, Pro Talent, 29 years ago. And since then, Cindy has honed her skills as a sought-after motivational speaker, business trainer, business coach, and mentor. She's a best-selling author. She's an award-winning charity head. And while running a Westville-based recruitment agency, Pro Talent, which has won more than 30 awards over the course of her business excellence, Cindy has been the author of the best-selling book, How to Be Unstoppable. In November 2021, Cindy wrote a motivational business book aimed at women titled How Does She Do It All as well. So Cindy's won many awards for enlightened entrepreneurial abilities and won the BWA Regional Achiever of the Year award. Cindy, that is amazing. I love to have another accomplished author on our podcast. Welcome.
Andrew, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. And yes, it seems like a lot of accolades, but it's been a long time as well. It's been nearly 30 years. So I think, there's a saying, you always overestimate what you can do in a year, but we always underestimate what we can do in 10 years. And I think when you stick to stuff, you become good at it. And hopefully, with a bit of consistency, I think that's how you get recognized, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Well, let's back up a little bit. Tell us a little about your story and what made you you.
So I think, when I was in school, I was one of those kids who was always trying to do my best at everything. I was quite academic and, always, quite disciplined for, compared to my peers. And I came from a family where we didn't have the money for university fees. So I took on about 5 jobs during my university days and managed to pay all my fees and, kind of was like that person who stood out as being very, very disciplined, hardworking, and always just loving everything I did. So whether it was waitressing or promotions or anything, I just absolutely loved it. And then I got the opportunity to run a student agency where we placed students in jobs doing the kind of work I used to do. So it was so awesome to see young, hungry, dedicated, determined people wanting to change their lives. So that was very exciting. And then I think a major catalyst for me was when I was about 25. I had been running my business for 2 years, but there was a gentleman, Andrew, his name is Andrew as well. He became my mentor, and he was just a really passionate business trainer and mentor. And he came up to me one day and he said, "I see seeds of greatness in you." And I remember running to the bathroom, looking in the mirror. I saw nothing. I saw no seeds of anything. And Andrew and I started a really a long ongoing business relationship where I'd meet him every month for mentorship. And, he'd say, "Have you written a book?" And I'd be like, "Of course I haven't written a book. I'm 25, And he'd say, "Well, there's a book in everyone." And he knew I had a passion for the community. And he'd say, "Oh, I'm sure you'll start a foundation." And he'd say things like, "How are you going to be the best boss?" Or "How many times in the year will you appear in the press?" And I thought, who measures things like this? And, he just thought very differently to the way I did. So I think it really rubbed off on me. And being a little overachiever, whatever goals we set in those meetings, I would be determined to return a month later, having smashed those goals. And then and then also he'd say, read this. And then it happened over time. But within a few years, I was saying, wait, read this, read that. And the weird irony is, he owned a business training college, and he immigrated to Canada. And when he left South Africa, I bought his business training college from him and started training entrepreneurs. And then I loved it so much. I studied coaching, and one of the things I think that was such a big change for me and such a motivator. He said to me, why aren't you speaking? Why aren't you a motivational speaker? And I said, because I'm terrified. I'm terrified. I've always been nervous and anxious. And he said, just go out there and speak. So I did. I put it out there. I said to people, oh, I'm going to do motivational speaking. And I got like 4 or 5 gigs in the matter of about a week or two. And I thought, no ways. And I'm sure I was terrible. But the thing is, he was right. You know, sometimes you just got to put yourself out there and say, you know, I'm available. I'm keen to get going in this career. People gave me a chance, and yeah, so my journey has been one of, I think, following my passions and following my strengths and listening to my instincts. So, you know, and one thing has almost seemed to have been a natural progression of the thing before. So it's just been like maybe not very well planned out, but I think it's been a result of a lot of dedication and a lot of short-term planning. I think if you told me at 23 that at 52 I'd be here, I'd be like, no way, you know. But looking back now, it's kind of, there was never one massive jump where I was out of my depth. I think it was just a natural, organic, but steady growth, and mixed with a healthy dollop of determination and solid weekly planning. It's not sexy at all. It's just quite robotic, actually. Yeah.
So how much of that early mentorship really defined your desire to begin helping others later on in your life?
I think it was pivotal, because I often look back, even I think every week, and I think, gosh, you know, if I hadn't had a mentor, or and it wasn't just Andrew as a mentor, through his business course, I also created a mastermind group, then ran a mastermind group. So I was surrounded by little tribes of entrepreneurial thinkers and people who are seekers. I call them seekers, people who are not happy with the status quo. So I think for many, many years, and for most of my business career, I've been surrounding myself with like-minded people who are not happy with the status quo. They want to grow, they want to be better, do better, have more. And that probably led me to become a mentor and a coach and an inspirational speaker. So, and I think when I host events or when I speak, I am I'm preaching to the choir. I'm basically speaking to like-minded people who want to hear the message. They want to hear the story. They're hungry for stories of inspiration. A lot of people just desperately want to be told you can do this, you know, and they're wanting to hear from somebody who maybe seems just like them, you know, and nothing too special, but just somebody who did it and telling them, this is what I did right. Don't do this. Don't try this at home. And so I think that's been my journey. But I'm very grateful to have had a mentor. And honestly, if anyone says, you know, I can't afford it, I'd say you can't afford not to. You know, I think it's if you want to grow, having somebody in your corner who thinks you can do it when you can't, when you don't think you can do it, is an absolute winner.
Yeah, I that resonates really strongly with me, because, you know, I think about the American educational system, which is supposed to be, in the United States, it's supposed to be what prepares us for our future careers. It completely fails in every way to do that. And that's, for me, as a former educator. that's why I'm talking to you here and no longer in front of a classroom, because the system is one of, I feel like, continual discouragement rather than encouragement. So you say something like, you can't afford not to. You can't afford not to begin to look for mentors and look for talent placement. And I think that's because at this point, you have to almost consider that kind of an investment as a replacement or a supplement to whatever kind of actual formal education you get. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And, you know, I also think the education system is designed for conformity, and, you know, often we are scarred by it. You know, we're scarred by the cruel comments of teachers, or you know, and I also find it for many, and I'm going to make a very blanket statement here, but I think that for many entrepreneurs at school, it wasn't their finest hours. You know, they're ADD kids, they sort of hyperactive, they're nonconformists, but they always had that something in them. And I think any grown-up ADD kid who became an entrepreneur must just give themselves a big pat on the back for not allowing the educational system to kill their natural fire. You know, when I hang around entrepreneurs, it's just this buzz of energy. We all, I don't know, just on fire and so excitable. And, you know, and I think the education system doesn't really know how to cater for people who want to color out the lines. And, you know, they are the people who are thinking up, what if, how does this work? Let's break this, you know? So, you know, at school, we made a noise, or we did things differently, or, and I think a lot of the people who teach us aren't entrepreneurial. They are security focused, and, you know, and also at school, we probably hear 7 negatives to 1 positive. And from a psychological point of view, we need 7 positives to 1 negative to be inspired and positive. So, yeah, I think the school system, and I don't just think in the States, I think globally is designed to try and knock the stuffing out of a creative, curious, adventurous entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean that you described me in a nutshell. Even though I went into education, it wasn't a terribly good fit for me, because I was trying to teach and mentor people, and the system was very much don't do that. So then I really like the idea then of talent acquisition and talent placement, because tell us a little bit about that kind of a process of how do you find and fit people who may have been lost in education, or just continual discouragement, or just even don't know really what their skill set is. How do you help them find that within themselves and direct them properly?
So a lot of the times we don't do that, because obviously we have people coming up to us knowing what they want, and we kind of match them to the role. But I think a large part of my career, which has been well over 30 years in recruitment, has been sitting face to face with that candidate and asking them those hard questions. When you were 7, what did you want to do? Why did you want to do that? What makes you come alive? What is that thing you do that you always wonder, why doesn't everybody else do this like I do it? Or what do you get compliments on? What do you do that when you spend time, it flies? And often you see the light shining. And I'll give you an example. For instance, there would be a candidate and they're applying for a bookkeeper role, but I can see they're more suited to sales. And I'll hold up 2 hands and say, you've got the bookkeeper role, you've got the sales role, and you can see the eyes will go to the thing they want, So it's almost as if their body language is betraying their deepest desires. So for me, I think a lot of it is just, it becomes almost a bit intuitive when you're meeting people, and you can see, who the extroverts are, the introverts, people who have a natural affinity towards certain things. And I think for some people, I've had feedback years later to say, do you know that your interview changed my life? I'm like, what? My interview? And they'll say, you said something to me that I remember. And so I think for being a recruiter is actually quite a position of potential power to hurt or help people, where if you can notice something, to share it, to say, wow, do you know that you've got a very unique skill? Or I've often interviewed people where they've said, you know what, I really want to do? I don't have the courage to do this, but I want to start a business doing this, but I'm applying for a job doing that. And I'll be like, I know what, here's the deal. Start your job, start your business, and see how that goes. And if all else fails, come back to me and I'll help you find a job. It's almost giving people a psychological safety net. So, so for me, my passion is more entrepreneurship than employment, just personally, because that has been something I'm passionate about. But it is exciting when you see somebody finding a company where maybe they've never ever had a great boss, or never had an exciting job, or never been paid what they're worth, or never had a career path, and all of a sudden they've got that. So in our recruitment agency, what we do is every time we make a permanent placement, we ring the bell. That ringing of the bell signifies we've changed one life. And every year our goal is not about money, but how many lives we want to change for the positive. So it's a very meaningful job. It's it's got a lot of significance in it, and it's super cool when you phone somebody up and you say, guess what, you got the job, and they scream and shout and cry, and it's just it's much better than, I don't know, dealing with a stock product, or yeah, it's very, very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I completely relate, and I understand the same thing when we're able to help someone realize their book, and that it begins to change lives that they want to change. So that leads me kind of to the question, how much did these stories inspire you to become an author?
I think both my books are literally, because I speak all the time, I'm always doing motivational speaking. I'm always making notes on what I want to say. I've never repeated the same speech over again. I've never gone in with a script. Every day I'm a new person. So I start it's crazy because some days I'll do the same talk 3 times or the same title, but it's a different talk. But I think every single experience in life is in the book. It's when my friends have read my 2 books, they've said it's like sitting talking to you, So, it's my voice, my words, it's my thoughts. And I think, I think my first book, I had written it when my business was 20 years old. And the initial thought was to do something on the 20 lessons I've learned in 20 years. But there were 20 chapters, but I called it How to Be Unstoppable, because I've had this mantra my whole life, pretty much my whole adult life. I'm an unstoppable action taker. And it's kind of driven me and motivated me, and kind of set me apart from my peers, because I literally believe I'm unstoppable. I always take action. And I think I've got that very, very lucky combination of creativity and consistency. I think it up and I execute. I don't fail in either one, if that makes sense. Most people are either good at creating and never get it done, or they're not good at creating but great finishers, So yeah, I think every experience I've had led me to both books. And then in How Does She Do It? I'm so frustrated how people will put other people on a pedestal. So whenever I do a talk, or I'm out doing whatever, speaking at a conference or whatever, people will always share my bio like I'm some demigod as such. And then they'll want to talk to me afterwards, and they'll all go, I don't know how you do it. And the answer that I give is not very well. And it's absolutely fine, because so many people think, what they do is they put other people on a pedestal, which subconsciously puts them lower, and they walk around with this comparison. And just to say, let's strip away any facades. Let me tell you how I've done it. A lot of the things I've achieved that look successful have been by accident. And often, let me tell you the downside. Yes, there's success here, but let me tell you what it cost me. Let me tell you the mistakes I made along the way. You only saw the success. You didn't see the 15 years, or you saw that great achievement, but you didn't see what I gave up or what I did wrong, So, and for me, that it wasn't just self-deprecating wit. It was basically laying myself bare so that other people could look at the story and go, you know what? She's as fallible as I am. She's a normal person. And yet, despite not having anything particularly special, she's gone and done these extraordinary things. So for me, it's a book about, I'm a normal person, very ordinary. I just think in an extraordinary way, and I do extraordinary things. So it's just due to my conscious efforts that I've achieved, not due to having special DNA or, coming from a money tree or something like that. So for me, it was about everybody going, wow, if she can do it, so can I. And that was really the message, is just to say, I'm not special, I'm not different, but this is what helped me get there. Maybe you can borrow some of these few little tactics and strategies and characteristics I've employed, but let me, but you've also got something great that's going to be your superpower that isn't mine, And so, yeah, the books have definitely been about my favorite passions, the things that juice me up, the things that, that I know have been the good habits I've employed, so, yeah, and a lot of my speeches are around that as well, one or two topics.
Yeah. I see so much, in our potential authors, people that come to us in the very early stages, they also put other people on pedestals and they say, well, I don't necessarily feel like I should be an author because what unique do I have to say? And this is something that comes up very often in the podcast, imposter syndrome. And I even heard it from you a little bit in the very beginning when your mentor said, you have special things inside you. You need to write a book. And you looked at yourself in the mirror and you said, I don't see those kind of things yet.
Yeah.
So what are ways in which you help inspire people to see inside of them that thing they have? Because I believe what your mentor said. Everybody has a book inside of them. I really do believe that every single person is unique. So how do you help people realize that or just they have that imposter syndrome keeping them back?
I think most people know that I don't think they necessarily need me to show them that they have the imposter syndrome. I think most people realize they do. What they need from a mentor or a motivational speaker or a coach is somebody who can help reduce the mountain ahead of them into little rocks and in little pebbles. So you want to write a book. Okay, what's it called? Or what's the theme? Or have you ever written anything before? Have you done a speech? Have you done an article, a blog post? What do you write on social media? Okay, let's start, what is your message to the world? What do you get passionate about in the morning? So I think for me, my message when I'm doing motivational speaking is that so many people don't expect enough for themselves. I've been saying, especially since COVID, I've been saying goal setting is a habit, but so is not goal setting. And if you look at the last 3 years, a lot of people have adopted a holding pattern in life. They're in limbo, they're waiting. They this too shall pass, we'll wait and see, and that's not a very successful strategy. So, I'm always inclined to say, listen, action is the antidote to despair. We know that. Let's start creating some action. What do you want to say about yourself at the end of the year that you can't say today? Write a book, and I love that saying, you don't need more time, you need a deadline. So for my second book, I gave myself 3 weeks to send it to the editor because I thought I've been sitting talking about this book for 3 years. I'm giving myself 3 weeks, and I sent it to him. It was not great, but it was there. I needed a deadline, and then we worked on it for another month. But the point is, so many of us, the codes we use, the things I've realized are red flags for lack of confidence or whatever, are when people say, when I have somebody to write it with me, or when I know more, or when I've studied more, and and I think those are signals that the person is holding themselves back. So, and I even with my first book, one of my successful business friends didn't know me when I'd written the book, but he looked at me the one day and he said, "What made you think you could write a book?" I said, "What made me think I couldn't?" And
I'm feeling that.
and it's funny because Andrew always said to me, there's a book in everyone. And, your book is your book. It's your experience. Nobody can say that there's anything, what makes you qualified? Just the fact that you're a person and you've experienced life and you have a story, it's going to resonate with someone. And I know people who write books for 5 people. They're writing a book for their family. They're not trying to make money. They're sharing their history. They're sharing what they've been through. I know people who are waiting for parents to die so they can share their stories of abuse, of coming out, and they are documenting books as we speak and waiting for the people who hurt them to not be hurt by what they have to say, if that makes sense. So I think there's so many reasons to write a book. I'm definitely going to write another one, possibly next year. I run a big charity foundation, and I've got a really cool view on how we can change the world. And I want to share some of the stories that have made me laugh, they've made me cry, they've made me shudder, they've made me want to kill, angry, at injustices and that. And I've got so many beautiful stories of our campaigns and our random acts of kindness over the last 18 years. So I want to be able to put that into a book of how my heart is broken for certain things, while we're trying to change the world. So I don't know if everyone would read it, but I think I'd really, really enjoy writing it. And I think there's some stories that are beyond miraculous and beyond funny and beyond sad. So I think some of those stories need to be told. So I think I'll have a lot of fun writing that book. And and I think if somebody says, I'd love to write a book, I don't know what about. Well, what have you been through that others haven't? Maybe you've got a unique perspective on the world, and we all have unique perspectives. So I don't think anyone needs to feel they need to be equipped to write, but I do think some people need help to write. A friend of mine contacted me last week, and he's been paralyzed twice, and he's 22, and he said, I've got a story, but I'm going to have to speak it out. I need a ghostwriter, and I put him onto someone, but he's got a great story. And I can imagine how many other people would benefit so much from his experience and his story and his lessons learned. So I'm so glad he's not allowing the fact that he's not a great writer to stop the story being told. So I think that's important. So yeah, I mean, I would encourage anyone to write a book. And it's not about how many copies you sell. That's great. My first book is a bestseller. My second book is selling very well. But I think it's about being proud of what you've put on paper. Is it me? Is it my, is it integrous to me? Is it my voice? Is it my story? And and am I proud of what I've given, and can it help the world? And I think if it answers a few of those questions, then I think it's a book worth writing. Not every book is going to be a bestseller, and not everyone's going to love your book, but that's okay. One of our top athletes in South Africa spoke recently at an event, and she said, I realized I'm not money. Not everyone's going to love me. And I thought that was so cute. But it's true, So, we don't want to be everyone's favorite. We want to be someone's favorite author or someone's favorite book. And I think that would be great success, So yeah, I would encourage anyone, just start writing. How do you write? You write and you just sit. What is in your mind? Try and commit to a little discipline of a couple of minutes or half an hour a day. I remember reading what's written after 6 a.m. should not have been. Should not be read, and what's read after 6 a.m. shouldn't be written. So I think there's that. And somebody says, is writing hard? And I remember a quote by Ernest Hemingway. He said, when people ask, is writing hard? He says, you just sit at the typewriter and allow yourself to bleed. So I think for some people it's hard. I've got friends who've written tell-all books, and they've had to stop it in patches because they are so emotional about what's happened to them. I didn't ever have that with my books, because there wasn't anything that was traumatic that I was sharing. It was such a light, happy feeling. Some days I'd sit there and I'd realize I hadn't moved for 5 hours because I was just so engrossed in the process, But I realized not everyone might feel that way. It might be a chore, but I think if you dedicate half an hour a day, you're going to get somewhere. And then, as I said, I think set a deadline, because I know so many people, I'm writing a book, but you said that 7 years ago, it must be a long book by now. And I don't think they've given themselves a deadline or put themselves under pressure. So I would say, I'd encourage anybody, if there's a book in you, write it, and you're putting your magic out in the world, and the world needs more magic. So, and the world loves stories. People love stories. So share your story, and no one can say you're lying. If it's your story, it's your story. So I think it's really, really awesome to be able to share and add to the beautiful thread that that of literature that's out there, or ideas or concepts. And I think if you get one person who loves what you do, they'll tell others, and that creates its own network effect.
Yeah. That is amazing, because that is exactly what a lot of our audience, those are the questions they have. That's perfect. And, usually I ask for some final thoughts, but I think you really covered exactly the gist of what our podcast is about right there, and just being able to actually sit down, write, find an accountability partner, work with somebody, work with Leaders Press. If not Leaders Press, find someone else. Get that book out there. Absolutely. Cindy, that's fantastic. So how do our audience find you? What's the best way for them to actually engage with you?
I think the best thing would be to go to my website, and it's www.cindynorcott.co.za, and it's CINDYNORCOTT.co.za. And if anyone goes to my website, they can email me, contact me, and I'll certainly respond immediately.
Perfect. And those links are down below, ladies and gentlemen. Cindy, it's really been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here today.
An absolute pleasure, and keep up your great work on developing and supporting writers. I think it's beautiful work, and the world definitely needs what you've got to offer. Thank you.
We're definitely flattered, Cindy. All right, we wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors.
Thank you so much, Andrew.